Welcome back. Take one breath with me and just take one moment. Because today we're going to talk about something most people spend an entire life trying to avoid. And that's failure. You know, that word alone tends to make people uncomfortable. You know, you get this feeling of tension in your body. You know, people tend to look away. But today we're going to turn that idea upside down. Because failure is not our enemy. Failure is probably the greatest teacher you will ever encounter if you choose to frame it that way. And yeah, success feels incredible, right? Success will feel very validating. And it can feel like the moment everything finally worked out. But the truth is, success rarely asks you to grow. That's failure's job. Failure demands that you stop, you reflect, you reevaluate, you adjust. And when you do this, you become stronger. You know, the truth is, we learn nothing from our successes. But we can learn everything from our failures. So with that thought, it makes you think, why does success teach us so little? So if you think about it, think about a time in your life when everything went perfectly. Your project succeeded effortlessly. Your relationship flowing without force or effort. A goal that came smoother than you expected. And yeah, we may celebrate these moments and we may enjoy the victory, sometimes not. Sometimes we're looking for more, but it's just what happened in the moment. But the truth is, when we're successful, we rarely stop to analyze why everything worked. Because something inside us says that when we succeed, something inside, great, keep on going. But in the event of failure, something very different happens. Our minds start asking questions like, am I good enough? Why did it happen like this? What is wrong? Am I a failure? What went wrong? What could I do differently next time? Questions like this can be the birthplace of growth. Famous inventor Thomas Edison said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And you think of it like, what if you had that mindset that you were going for the race of your life and you kept on not quite getting there, but you kept on learning? I need this. I need more rest. I need more fuel. I need more mindset. I need more this. I need more treatment. And you keep on, rather than saying, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to get there, you just get up and do it again. And every time you learn, you add some piece to the puzzle. Because the truth is, failure only happens when you quit. True failure. Like the ultimate failure is when you quit. If you didn't quite succeed and you reevaluate and learn and you try again, then you haven't quit. That's the mindset that changes everything, because failure stops being something that defines you and it becomes something that teaches you. What a frame. failure as a teacher. But we can't downplay that there is an emotional weight of failure. And the truth is, if we're honest, failure hurts. It can bruise your confidence, it can shake your belief in yourself, it can make you question your abilities. Sometimes it makes people want to quit entirely. And I've seen it. But that emotional response is not a sign that there's something wrong with you. It's a sign that it's important. Because something that's not so important is not going to hit you so hard. It's a sign that you care. It's a sign that you're doing something of value. And caring deeply about something means that you're invested in the growth. But here's the challenge in that. Most people experience failure and immediately label themselves instead of learning from the event. Think about it like Tony Robbins said, the quality of your life is directly related to the quality of the questions you ask yourself every day. If you want a better life, just ask yourself better questions. You know, if you said that attempt failed, what did I learn from it? That's a good quality question. But a lot of times people will say, I failed. Maybe I'm not good enough. And that's not a great frame. But if you have this subtle shift that it was just the attempt that failed and it wasn't you that failed, and like, what if I'm not good enough is not a thing? Because failure is just something that happens on the path to becoming who you were meant to be. Michael Jordan once said, I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. What if that was your fight song? The reason I have succeeded is because I've failed so many times. One, I got up one more time. And two, I learned from every time I fell. So, of course, that should probably bring us to the work of learning from failure. Because we have this ego, this sense of identity. We have built into ourselves a part of our psyche that's designed to be hyper vigilant to threat, right? Anything dangerous. It wants to protect you from threat. But it does that by keeping you small. And if you don't want to be small, you can't listen to that inner critic, that ego, that sense of identity. But the truth is, this doesn't come automatically. And many of us, like for years and years, I thought I was that negative inner voice. I thought that was who I am. But the funny thing is, like, I didn't really realize that at the time I felt like I was in a battle in life. And yet I was fighting for the wrong side. I was fighting for that inner critic. I was like agreeing with it that I sucked and that I was a loser, that I'd never become and I was just like cheering it on and hyping it up. It wasn't till I decided that like maybe that's not the truth. Maybe that's not who I am. Maybe that's just designed to help me, prevent me from being hurt. But the way it was doing it by keeping me small wasn't an effective way to live my life. And maybe that's when I started arguing with it. And the truth is, battling with your inner critic, your sense of identity, that whole hypervigilance, a threat thing, takes work, intentional work. It's just like if you really want to learn from failures, if you really want to be a success, you have to learn from every failure. You have to find the gold in everything. You spend a life digging for gold in failure. Because learning from failure is not automatic. We're not built that way. We're built a different way. We have to learn to do this. We have to do it deliberately, and we have to practice it over and over and over again. Just like they say, yoga is a practice. You're never going to win yoga, right? It's just like running. When you started running, you weren't very fast, but probably now your easy pace was probably your all-out pace at one point. But learning from failure takes effort. It takes humility. It takes willingness to look honestly at what happened, eyes wide open, because failure contains lessons, but only if you're willing to search for them. You get out your mining pick and you start digging, and you find some gold in the failure, a lesson, something that's going to improve your future life. Because it's there. It's just you got to dig for it, and you got to do it intentionally. It's not going to happen on its own. And maybe you start reframing questions. You don't say, why does this always happen to me? Ask, what is this trying to teach me? You ever heard that quote that the lesson will keep on repeating itself until it's learned? Instead of asking, why did I fail? Ask, what skill do I need to develop? Instead of asking, is this the end? Ask, what is the next step? This is digging for gold. This is transforming failure into information. This is alchemy, And it doesn't matter how long in your life you dwelled on failure and how maybe you're not good enough, or maybe this isn't for you, you can still change. These are the questions that will transform failure into information. And the information is what leads to improvement. I remember I heard it once that said, if you ask the universe, God, whatever your higher power, life itself, I want to be resilient. Do you think it would go, poof, you're resilient? Or do you think it would start putting you through situations which were really difficult that you could just barely overcome? And every time you overcame it, you started building resilience. Because resilience is not built during the easy moments. It's built during the hard ones. Every single challenge you face head on, every single challenge you overcome builds your ability to endure the next one. It's like when you're going back to running, every single run helps you a little more to be able to do the next one and the next one and the next one. You think about muscles in the gym. Muscles grow stronger when they're pushed outside of their comfort zone. And the same principle works for us, and it applies to our mind. It's interesting. Muscles have three incredible properties. They have, say, excitability. So the nervous system can send a message to it to activate it, right? They also have elasticity. They can stretch. And they also have plasticity, that if you keep them in a certain place for long enough, they'll gain that new place. And the brain's the same. The brain has excitability. There's neurons firing. It has elasticity. Have you ever heard the quote, a mind once stretched by a new idea never regains its original dimensions? And that's it. Like you can stretch it and then it can gain that new way of seeing, hearing, hoping. It's just like what we're talking about. Once you've heard this, you can't unhear it. Now you have a choice. You can incorporate it, you can practice it, you can keep on stretching your mind until it gains this new length. Or you can leave it aside. And I'm not saying what I'm saying is like anything I'm saying here is the end all be all of life, but if this works for you, then try it. Siddhartha Gautama the Buddha said, believe nothing. Believe nothing you hear, nothing you read, nothing you see. Don't even believe anything I say until you've tried it for yourself and you have experiential knowledge. So take it on. Try to create some experiential knowledge. So like I was saying, think about the muscles in the gym. They're going to only grow when they're pushed beyond the comfort zone. And the same applies to your brain. Your brain's elastic and it's plastic. And each time you recover from a disappointment, each time you stand back up after falling, each time you choose to keep moving forward, you're building a psychological strength. And that strength becomes a foundation for future success. If you build your house on a strong foundation, it can weather any storm. The author Samuel Beckett once wrote, "Ever tried? Ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better." If you really want to do extraordinary things in this life, you have to find a way to frame failure as your teacher. And then you have to practice the questions you're asking yourself. You have to get out your pick and dig for gold. Because if you learn nothing from failure, from any situation in your life, then it's waste. But anything you learn is valuable. This episode is all about reframing your relationship with failure. And trust me, I've failed before. And I've given up. I've also failed and got back up. And sometimes it took help from other people, and sometimes it was just me all by myself scraping myself off the ground. Because I understood that more than likely, nobody's coming to save you. Because no one can save you, with the possible exception of yourself. But it's going to take work. It's going to take deliberate, purposeful, intentional work. But I think you can save yourself. Imagine what your life would look like if you stopped fearing failure. Like literally, if you started leaning into failure. I was watching a podcast episode and there's a Canadian marathon, Rory Linkletter. And he started with this new coach. And he said, there's this totally different way that he's doing workouts now. Because in the past, he was like, I wanted to succeed on every workout. I wanted to hit all the paces. And that's what I was going for. And my new coach had this new system where we purposely push all the way to failure. And I was like, wow, if you were just doing the things you knew you could do, you just you just squeak by and you just crush every workout. And then you change your philosophy. And the intention was to push as hard as you could and push yourself so far that you fail. Don't you think that would be incredible knowledge? Maybe you might see that you were capable of more than you ever thought you were, than you ever knew you were. maybe you would find another level. Think about it. If you stopped fearing failure, what risks would you take right now? What is something that you're not doing? Is there somebody you're not talking to or asking out because you feel like they'll turn you down? Are you not starting that business? Are you not writing that piece of information? Are you not creating that social media site where you put out your thing in the world? What dreams would you pursue? When I was 23 years old, I quit my job and I bought a one-way ticket to Europe and I backpacked Europe. It was one of the smartest things I'd done up to that point in my life. What possibilities would you open up if you're not afraid anymore? Because when failures stop being something you fear and they become something you learn from, you'll realize this is the pathway to mastery. Learning from failure, putting yourself out there, doing more than you think you're capable of. That is the road to mastery. The most successful people on this planet are definitely not the people who avoided failure. In fact, they say that some incredible amount, like I feel like it was like 60% of all self-made millionaires, or no, it was something like, or 90% of all self-made millionaires, some very large number have gone bankrupt once. And then a high percentage of those have gone bankrupt two or more times because they just kept on going for it until they got there. So when failure stops being something you fear, it becomes something you learn from. And you're on the road to mastery. And most people in the world, like the most successful people in the world, don't avoid failure. They're the people who develop a healthy relationship with it. They understand that every single attempt provides information. Every setback contains a lesson. Every mistake offers insight. And every lesson moves them one step closer to success. Imagine if you knew for absolute certain, there were only 20 setbacks between you and absolute success. How fast would you charge through every single setback? And how much time would you look in the rearview mirror as that setback went past? So if you are experiencing failure right now, I applaud you because you are putting yourself up. You're putting yourself out there. You're doing what so many people won't do. Success is great, but failure is a badge of honor. It means you are pushing yourself past what you are currently capable of, but you're building strength, the strength that will take you to where you're going. If something didn't work out the way you hoped, if a dream stumbled or a plan collapsed, remember, failure is not the opposite of success. It's not. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the process that creates success. Every achievement sits on the foundation of lessons learned from things that didn't work. Hear that loudly. Every single great achievement on this planet sits upon a foundation of lessons learned from the things that didn't work. So instead of you asking yourself whether you failed, ask yourself, what did you learn? Because the moment you begin learning from failure, failure stops being your enemy. And failure will be your greatest teacher. Setbacks are beginning a brand new, stronger story. Thanks again. Keep learning from the things that don't work out and keep on building your own inner advocate.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Inner Advocate, a podcast by Kimen Peterson, formerly Conversations with Kimen. If you found value in today's episode, please follow, like, and share the podcast with someone who you think may benefit from it. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and connect on Instagram at your_inner_advocate. Until next time, keep listening to and developing your inner advocate.